We are here. We are back. We are talking about football. It is not Vikings week. There was not a whole lot of Vikings things to go around. This show is a Vikings show. But Jordan and I, now have become resident, just NFL playoff experts. So we're going to dive into some of the games, namely the two NFC North games that happened yesterday on Sunday. Not the outcomes that Vikings fans probably would have wanted unless you are a sick and twisted individual who like to endure pain. Jordan, fine Martin Luther King Day.
I am doing well. It was a terrible day for Vikings fandom. I do know someone that they are a Steelers fan. They told me they were rooting for Cleveland and Baltimore in the playoffs as well, because then it makes whenever they lose to them, it makes it look better almost. Like it was like this weird 3D chess. Yeah, I couldn't get on board with it either. I was rooting very hard for Dallas, which I'm not proud of saying, and I was also rooting very hard. Yeah, I was also rooting very hard for the Rams. Funny enough, here we go. If you're playing Load the Box Bingo, put this one on the board. Living in Cincinnati, all of my Bengals friends hate the Rams, and everyone hates the Cowboys. So I was on the flip side of everyone I knew basically yesterday, rooting against, rooting for, the Rams, who obviously, they beat Cincinnati in a Super Bowl, so that was unpopular. And then rooting for Dallas is always unpopular. So, pretty brutal. We don't do this often, but when you have two division rivals in the postseason, and they both win, you're going to come on the show and you're going to talk about them. And we talked last week about how if the Lions lost, we might do a half-hour show where we just laugh about how, same old Lions, blah, blah, blah. Well, they ended up winning a very close game. Green Bay, of course, wiped the floor with that. I mean, holy cow, that was embarrassing for the Cowboys. So we're going to talk about both games, and we're going to talk a little Vikings stuff towards the end of the show. So we hope you stick around with us as we talk about these games and our 2 cents on them, and kind of what this means for the Vikings going forward. And I'm going to try not to overreact and say, 15 years in the basement like Cleveland for so long, that there's no way we can ever win games ever again. But let's start with the Green Bay game, right? Green Bay, obviously, from rip, looked unstoppable as an offense. Aaron Jones had himself a monster game, like 120 rushing yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns. Green Bay ends up winning 38-32. The game was never that close. It really wasn't. It was never even close to being that close. What was your takeaways? Just on the whole, I'm not even going to say a specific thing. Just on the whole, what were you thinking after that game ended?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I think we just need to acknowledge that both Jordan and I are playing hurt today. Each of our families are coming off COVID, so not related to each other. We have not seen each other in person, so it's not like we got each other sick, but dealing with separate bouts of COVID. But we're here. We play hurt.
We have a new strand of E-COVID. It's E-COVID that I had apparently last week when we recorded. Transmitted it to you through Discord, and unfortunately got your whole family sick too.
And the other thing that I think just needs to be acknowledged, Jordan and I make fun of ourselves for showing up to this show only after good weeks. We'll come on here after the Vikings, have a shutout victory in Las Vegas, or after they spank the Saints, or whatever, after destroy Green Bay back in week 8, and that seems like an eternity ago. But today we are coming on here, we're taking our medicine, and we're taking it on the chin like a couple men. So we're here to talk about some football. The Green Bay Packers thoroughly and utterly dismantled this once thought of juggernaut in the Dallas Cowboys at their place. The Packers, or excuse me, the Cowboys have kind of, throughout the whole season, sort of been a completely different team at home versus on the road. at home averaging 37 points a game, blowing everybody out as Jordan takes a swig of vodka from his massive football mug. Um, and the Packers, and I think they said it on the broadcast, the Packers looked like the team that actually was ready to play and ready to take the fight to the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb looked visibly displeased for most of the first half, which was the game. At halftime, it was over. 27-7, the game was over. It just looked like the Cowboys were feeling the weight and the burden of the pressure that has sort of been put on them. Rightfully so in some ways. They've had 3 straight 12-win seasons, and they've gone 0-3 in the playoffs. Or 1-3 in the playoffs in those 3 years. So it's a bitter disappointment for them, but you can't take away from what Green Bay did. And we saw it on Sunday night when they came to US Bank Stadium. They took the fight to the Vikings, granted an undermanned Vikings team, but nonetheless, they controlled that game, they dominated that game, and it looked awfully similar. Dak Prescott did his team no favors, but the Packers also took advantage of massive Prescott mistakes. And so you have to look at that game and be impressed. It was a blowout, so there's not a whole lot of play-by-play X's and O's to dive into, but what do you make of this Packers team? 3 months ago, I thought they were a bad team, and I think they were. But now they're into the divisional round. Granted, they have to go to San Francisco, but they just showed us that they're not too scared of going on the road against a heavily favored opponent. I don't know. What do you make of this team, sort of this young group with a bunch of no-name receivers and Jordan Love and all this? What do you make of this squad?
I think, like you said, Dallas definitely felt like, hey, if we don't win this game going away, there's a good chance Mike McCarthy doesn't have a job at the start of the 2021 season. Like, he is unemployed in February. So I do think that they felt that way, and Dallas came out. Their defense, for some reason, just wasn't. They weren't ready. And Green Bay did feel like the team that had absolutely nothing to lose. Kind of bigger picture, I think it's still too early to say, yeah, no, Jordan Love's the guy. I didn't see him making these, Aaron Rodgers-esque, hell, I'm going to be honest, I didn't see him making Cousins-esque throws that, tight windows, difficult coverage, reading defenses. He didn't look like that much of an assassin. It looked like he can just throw a pretty decent ball off his back foot against a blitz to a guy who has 20 yards of separation. And so I'm not poo-pooing Jordan Love. I am a little bit, because the conversation nationally, I don't know if you've listened to any of the national shows this morning, but it is all, oh my gosh, but Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, they're all going to be Super Bowl champions, and they're going to have 60 plus years of quarterback dominance, and how did they do it, and blah, blah, blah. I just think it's early. I think a lot of his big splash plays, his average completion, like I don't remember the exact name of the stat, but it was like the yards of separation his receivers had for his average completion was over 5 yards of separation.
It's a practice throw.
I don't know why Dallas felt the need to blitz the way they did. Maybe Green Bay's offensive line is just that good. And look, that's what you need with a young quarterback. You need a good running game and a good offensive line. So they did make Dallas, hey, Micah Parsons isn't getting home by himself, and the defensive line isn't getting a push. We have to blitz. Who's that sound like? The old hat on my head. But we have to blitz and bring extra guys, and now there's giant holes on the field where guys can just sit. And a lot of those balls Jordan Love was throwing, with both feet in the air off his back foot, they were just wide open. I mean, that like a different level of wide open. I would, there are some quick slants in the NFL where I'm like, oh, that guy's wide open and he has a step. We're talking a different level of backyard football. It looked like they were playing 11-on-3 almost, like the way some of these guys got open. So it was definitely, I think Green Bay's offensive line played a hell of a game. I think Aaron Jones had a hell of a game. Jordan Love did enough to, he didn't make any mistakes. He didn't hold on to the ball too long. And he didn't do what some young quarterbacks would do, which is, oh, I'm getting blitzed, I'm going to run away from the blitz. He just said, I think my guy's going to be over here. And his guy was. So, good for Green Bay. Long term, again, I'm not convinced that Green Bay next week, as they go to San Francisco, let's see how the offensive line holds up against that San Francisco defensive line. And a defense that is, I think, better than Dallas's. I think a defense that has the ability to really just dominate. And maybe those guys are only going to have like 1 yard of separation. And there was one play, I think it was Jordan Love's last throw of the game, where, he had his tight end leaking out on a little play action, and it was kind of like to ice the game and put it away. And he threw the ball, and it was too wide. It wasn't a good throw, and that stopped the clock, and it gave Dallas the ball back with a less than 1% chance of, touchdown 2-point, onside touchdown 2-point. That was the, I obviously in under 2 minutes. But
it had the that game sort of had the 2017 NFC Championship game feel to it, where it was like, hey, just 4 touchdowns and 4 2-point conversions, and we're right back.
We just need to, for the first time since the first drive, look good on offense. And it did have that feel of like, I feel like even the Vikings had the Green Bay game against the Vikings had that feel. The second one where it was like, okay, offense, can we move the? Oh, nope.
All we need.
we just need to score and get a stop. And we're talking as a family during that Green Bay game, the Vikings game. I did not go see my family, even though they all have COVID as well. They are who I got it from, but that's beyond the point. I remember talking during that Green Bay game about okay, we need 1 turnover and a couple of drives. That's all it is. We just need a turnover and a couple of drives. And, I love that false hope. It did feel that way. Hats off to Green Bay, man. I mean, there are 2 sides of me. There's the Vikings fan that is very disappointed and very like, dang it, did they get the third quarterback right? Did they pass it from Favre to Rodgers and now to Love? But then there's the part of me that was pounding the table as how does anybody in the media saying the Vikings should draft Jordan Love? Jordan Love is a good quarterback. I think he's going to be really good at the next level. And, well, shucky ducky, isn't it crazy that I was right on that one? And so there is that part of me that's like, hey, I love this guy in the draft. He had a really good Sunday in the playoffs. He's going to the divisional round. We'll see how he plays against San Francisco. But, way back, jump in the way back machine. FOMO co-host Jack used to make fun of me all the time because he said, you're not allowed to talk about Jordan Love in a positive light anymore because he's the Green Bay quarterback now. So unfortunately, he was really my first draft love, I think, and pun intended. And now he's, going to break my heart for the next 15 years maybe. So yeah, man, go ahead.
I was going to say, let me add a couple things, unless, what were you going to finish with?
I was literally all I was going to say is, we're not doing a, how does the San Francisco Packers game line up? Like, we're not going to do it like a normal Vikings show where we say, this was last week's game, this is next week's game. We're not going to talk about next week's games until they happen. And that was all I had to add, so I would love to hear you put a bow on this.
Yeah. Quick thing on the 49ers. I think they have the discourse around them as being a juggernaut and being an unstoppable force. But you look at the losses that they did have, when their vulnerabilities are exposed, they are exposed hard. That Baltimore game, they got punched in the mouth and couldn't respond at home. When Brock Purdy gets rattled and starts just giving the ball to the other team, basically their 4 losses were all on Brock Purdy. So if the Packers are able to disrupt him enough and make him uncomfortable and do what they did to Dak Prescott, there's no guarantee this game ends with the 49ers moving on to the NFC Championship game. So just something to think about. I mean, especially with what we're seeing with Green Bay here.
I have one last thing that I would be remiss if I didn't bring up, because we started talking about a bunch of different things about Green Bay. I have to say, the Packers defense was so bad for like the first half of the season, and it really feels like it's toned it on. And they play my favorite type of defense in the entire league, which is make the team that you're playing throw the ball short and jump the route. That it's the best type of defense. It's fun to watch on TV, and it felt like they were taking away these deep over routes that Dallas wanted to do and making Dak take a check down, making the offensive coordinator for Dallas, which I think Mike McCarthy's the play caller, so making Mike McCarthy say, okay, we'll get the ball to CD on a quick slant, and then they tell Jair Alexander and whoever had the pick six, I can't remember who it was, but
Savage.
thank you. They tell these guys, hey, just go jump it. The ball's coming out quick. It's coming out underneath. Yep. So be aggressive. They're playing a really aggressive style. And like you said, I could see Purdy, trying to check that ball down, throwing some quick slants, and seeing, guys like Savage and Alexander. It's how the Packers make the money on defense, man, is they jump outs and it could snowball. It could similar to this Dallas game, and that's a scary thing to think about Green Bay specifically this season.
Yeah. I'm just gonna add a couple things in this game, and then we can talk about the more fascinating and frankly more entertaining game, which was Detroit, Los Angeles. Just echoing what you said about Jordan Love, the mechanics are the thing that worries me. And granted, they always do these side by side montages of Favre and Rodgers versus Love, and it's the same sexy release and off the back foot or off no feet at all, and that's all great and everything when it works, but there's a reason why most quarterbacks have good mechanics. There's a reason why mechanics and fundamentals and details are drilled into these players. Eventually it's going to betray you. And unless you are just a supreme talent like Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not convinced yet that Jordan Love is, it's gonna you're gonna get in trouble because of it. And so it's something that I worry about with him from just an objective perspective. No, I'm not I'm not necessarily cheering for the Packers, either this season or beyond with Jordan Love, but it's something that I think could come back to bite him. All that said, he's played mistake-free. He played mistake-free yesterday. He's had one interception in the last 9 games or something, and he's playing really well. I want to give just credit where credit is due, though, with Matt LaFleur. This young offensive group, especially in the wide receiver and tight end room, just remarkable. I think they have 8 guys who are either their first or second year in the league who take significant snaps on offense in those 2 positions. It's not an accident that they've succeeded so much, and I don't know who the Packers wide receiver coach is, but maybe we can figure that out and give him some credit too. But the way in which LaFleur was scheming these receivers wide open against a aggressive ball hawking, very good defense with a defensive coordinator that is going to get head coaching offers and very likely a head coaching job this offseason. He was making them look silly. That Musgrave touchdown, or was it Fergus? Whatever his name is, Musgrave. He caught it wide open at the 20-yard line, and still nobody touched him until the goal line. Yeah. It was just these guys were wide open. Romeo Doubs had a couple of awesome routes where he got over the middle and just kind of sat in between 4 people. And I'm very impressed by all of these wide receivers that all kind of look the same if you take away their numbers, and they all kind of run the same. Jaden Reed or whatever. I think that's his name. I mean, It's remarkable. I don't even know these guys' names. They're all just
6 of them, man.
There's 5 or 6 of them legitimately that play and get catches every game. And Christian Watson is almost an afterthought with this group. And part of that's injury, but part of that is what Reed and Wicks and Melton and Dobbs are all doing. Those guys have all had their moments, and especially Dobbs and Reed seem to always be the ones that are just biting defenders in the butt, and it's really impressive. From removing my emotion and my desire for the Packers to lose, it's very impressive to see what this group is doing, and Matt LaFleur has done a masterful job not only getting them ready to play but getting them wide open. So if you have a coach who is doing that masterfully, you're going to have a chance against San Francisco. It's just the way it's going to be. So
just an
I
update,
think,
by the way. The wide receivers
yeah,
coach is Jason Vrabel, whose last name should ring a bell. I'm not kidding. That's all I was looking up. The Jason Vrabel found in a snap. Been trying to figure out if they're brothers or what. I have here. This is from MetroLeague.org. I don't know if this is trustworthy. Says they're first cousins. So Mike Vrabel's cousin, former Jets offensive coordinator Jason Vrabel, is the wide receivers coach. So. Giving the Vrabel family its props. Apparently, they know how to make coaches.
fantastic. Well, again, congrats to Green Bay. They'll have their work cut out for them again, but it's very clear that they are going to be up for the task. What do you see, or what did you see from that Lions Rams game that is worth mentioning?
I saw and I appreciated the texts last night, confirming, last week I said that Kwesi drafted the second best wide receiver in this year's class, Jordan Addison, the number one being Puka Nacua. And Puka Nacua showed up.
Dude.
Matthew Stafford threw for 360-something yards, 367. Puka had just under half of those yards with 9 catches for $181 and a touchdown, breaking the rookie record. What stood out to me, however, was Cooper Kupp having 5 catches for just 27 yards. And I'm not saying that Kupp is washed, but it did feel like a lot of his targets were coming down in the red zone. And I thought the broadcast pointed out it was kind of predictable, the Rams in the red zone. And that led to them kicking a few field goals. And ultimately, they needed to turn at least one of those field goals into a touchdown to, propel them over the top. And obviously, I'm not going to play if this was a touchdown, the game is different. Because who knows? Detroit had the ball last. Who knows how it would have ended, blah, blah, blah. I thought Detroit did what they wanted to do. The defense held up strong in the red zone. Detroit, ran the ball decent enough, but, really Goff and that passing attack seemed to be in rhythm. And, Jared Goff in a dome, he's unbeatable, man. He's the greatest quarterback of all time when he is playing in a dome. Next round of the playoffs, I think it's guaranteed he's either going to Philly or he's going to Tampa. Oh no, it's at home.
No, it's home.
Shucks,
it's
man.
Home.
Well, Lions are your NFC champions. I'm gonna crown them now because no one's beating them in a dome. It's just not happening. So, where's the Super Bowl this year? It's in Vegas. Lions are your Super Bowl champions, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations.
The only way is if the 49ers beat the Packers on Saturday.
Okay,
that's the only way the Lions are going to be outed.
That's the only reason I'm rooting for San Francisco.
That's the only way.
No, I talked a big game about this game. I really thought Los Angeles passing attack was going to be, I want to say, more potent. Stafford had 367 yards.
And
they were viciously potent, and he didn't turn the ball over either. This wasn't a Nick Mullins 500-yard 3-interception game. This was 367, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. The Rams ultimately, it really was. It was the red zone offense, the over-reliance on Cooper Kupp down there. I think Detroit did a good job of taking him away in the red zone, really all over the field. It felt like they said, anybody else beat us, not Cooper Kupp. And they came up as short as you can come up in the NFL, one single point. I knew the game was over, unfortunately, when the Rams had to punt. Really good coaching by Dan Campbell.
5 minutes left.
Yes, really good coaching by Dan Campbell. Taking a 10-yard penalty instead of, on third down, to make it out of field goal range, rather than giving them maybe a 55-yard field goal or whatever it would have been. Basically saying, I trust my defense is going to either get a sack or cause an incompletion. I'm not giving you a chance to take a lead here. No, just send them back. We'll take our chances. And the Rams almost completed a big pass, I'm pretty sure, to Puka. Of course, who else? But were unable to. Again, it's kind of it's more hats off to the Lions than it is the Packers for me. I think the Lions somehow, because of what I expected from the Lions, I didn't expect that Dallas game to be a blowout. I really didn't. In my heart of hearts, I thought it would be a one-possession game and it would be close because it's the playoffs. I expected Detroit to lose by 17 because their defense couldn't stop the pass, and that's kind of what the Rams do best. So, man, the Lions, they're tough. I will give them that. They are tough.
Yeah, they tough with two Fs, man. They run at you, whether they catch it or run it or whatever. They're running at you to knock you over. And we joke about the Dan Campbell introductory press conference 3 years ago when he talked about biting off kneecaps and kicking people in the groin or whatever he was talking about. But that style of play has come to fruition. They're not necessarily dirty. I mean, you can't look at the Lions and call them a dirty team. I think they're just aggressive and physical. And I took exception with Kirby Joseph's hit on Tyler Higbee, partly because it was the exact same thing that he did to TJ Hawkinson. But not an illegal hit. You can't flag him for it. It's just it's a little bit of a cheap shot knowing that it's a defenseless receiver coming over the middle and you're taking out his legs. But
I appreciated Collinsworth, by the way, bringing up on the broadcast that if you asked every tight end and every receiver in the league, would you either get your knee blown out or a concussion? Every one of them is saying, hit me high, blow my head up. I'll take, I'll get my, locked over having my knee taken out and, my season ended. And I don't know if the Rams tight end I think Higbee was who got hit. I don't know if they said what his injury was, but like if he blew his knee out, he's going to miss a lot of next season too. So you're talking about, that's a pretty big hit.
He tore his ACL.
He did tear his ACL. Yeah, so
that's what I'm saying.
He could. I mean, what is that? Like 8 months recovery? Maybe longer than that. I mean, maybe a year.
Something
recovery?
like that. I think. I mean, him and Hawkinson were a few weeks apart with their injuries, but I think when I quickly mapped it out, I think Hawkinson should be back in time for the start of next season. So Higbee's at least going to be right up against it. As long as that ACL is actually torn. So
yeah, that's
and granted, Hawkinson tore both the ACL and the MCL, so that's maybe a little bit worse.
Yeah.
But all that aside, we have to acknowledge that the Lions, again, they did what they needed to do, and they were potent in the first half offensively. They could not be stopped offensively in the first half. I think the Rams got one stop, and it was kind of a phantom stop, given that it was that 4th and 4 where they called a false start when it was really an offside, and it would have given the Lions a first down, but it forced them to punt. And who knows how that drive ends? But they were in Rams territory, and obviously, Los Angeles tightened the screws a little bit in the second half and made Jared Goff uncomfortable. I mean, I think when you look at the Lions, I think this isn't really a secret, but when it comes to Goff, if he is protected and he has the timing and he doesn't have to wait 3 seconds for his receiver and he doesn't have to move in the pocket, he's as good as anybody.
Yeah.
But when he has to move just a little bit, his effectiveness plummets. And you saw that last night. The few times he had to move to his left, a couple times he just fell over. He was not. He's not going to be effective when you force him to do that. And the Rams finally got that, but they didn't do enough of it. And good on them for doing what they needed to do from Detroit's perspective. That is the one thing that needs to be acknowledged. You mentioned the red zone and everything. The other thing that I thought about with that was, yes, like Collinsworth said, he was predictable, but he was also, as in McVay, was also cute. It was like, let's do an end around on 2nd and 10 from the 13. It's like, what are we doing? That, like, jet sweeps and those types of plays that try to string out the defense, you need field and you need space to separate the defenders and get your blockers a chance to set up. Trying to sprint to the corner with whoever it is, who cares who it is, and you need more than 1 or 2 yards, you're asking for it when the defense only has to cover 20 yards of the field. So some of that stuff is like, what are we doing, Sean? And I mean, the red zones tells the story. The Rams were 0 for 3. They kicked 3 field goals. They were all under 30-yard field goals, and the Lions were 3 for 3. They had 3 touchdowns. game. That's it, right there. The Rams outgained them by 90 yards. They had even time of possession. Penalties were about even. Third down conversions and fourth down conversions were the exact same. The game was about equal on everything. Detroit had one more first down.
Yeah.
The game was about equal on every level, except the Rams moved the ball more often, but couldn't move the ball far enough in the red zone.
Yeah.
That was the game right there. Detroit tightened up in the red zone and took away Cooper Kupp, and that was it. So done, Aaron Glenn. He's a name that I've been sort of surprised at his head coaching interviews and those kind of things, because over the last 2 years I have been not impressed by Detroit's defense. They were last in the league last year, and this year they were in the 20s. But you have to give it to him what he has done over these last couple of weeks, and now this first playoff game, to where they executed the Ed Donatel bend but don't break about as well as you possibly can.
It was perfect.
I mean, 425 total yards, but 0 for 3 in the red zone. That's.
I heard Ed Donatel was actually at home in his easy chair, just weeping. Like tears of joy. Just the happiest person on the face of the planet. This is so far off topic, but I have to say it because it's hilarious. Favorite Dan Campbell quote of all time: "It doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes, I will beat your ass." The guy he's Jeff Bridges. He is literally Jeff Bridges, and I love Jeff Bridges. I love the Big Lebowski. He's an entertaining guy. This is maybe I'm gonna pass it off to you really quickly, and if you don't have anything, then I'll take it right back. But I want put a bow on it because I'm done talking about this game. This game pissed me off more than the Green Bay game. I wanted the Lions to be humbled because the fans are talking so much stuff, and it's come on, guys, read the room. You are the Lions, and I get you're having a great season. I'm happy for you, or I want to be happy for you. But I can't whenever you're like, oh, poverty franchise Minnesota, you guys suck, ha 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 ha. And it's like, okay, come on, let's not do the franchise as a whole talk, because that's not a conversation that you win. If you have any bows to put on this, I'm gonna pass it off to you. Other than that, I want to get into this. What does this mean for the Vikings portion of the show?
Very quickly, since you mentioned the fans, this will be my last thought on this specific game. I want to say congratulations and props to my good friend Dan Hubert. He is the only Lions fan that I am happy for today. The next thing, it's sort of expected at this point with sports fans. They have this short-term memory loss where, they forget everything in the past and all they care about is the very specific moment that they are in. Booing Matthew Stafford and giving him the middle finger, quite literally, was very just disappointing to see. I was hoping for better. I can't say I expected better, but I was hoping for better. Similar to how the Chicago Bulls fans booed Jerry Krause's wife.
Dead Jerry Krause?
Yeah, just pathetic when Jerry Krause, the general manager of the dynasty Chicago Bulls, was entered into their Ring of Honor. His wife, who is now his widow, was there to accept the honor in his place because Jerry Krause has passed away. The Chicago Bulls fans booed because of how the exactly on the big board or whatever, and because of how Jerry Krause, at least was portrayed in The Last Dance as sort of the villain of that dynasty. Anyway, seeing the success that Jerry Krause had in the Chicago Bulls is much greater than what Matthew Stafford had with the Detroit Lions. Obviously, Stafford never won a playoff game and never won the division and all those things. Matthew Stafford endured a dozen years as the quarterback for a worse than poverty franchise.
Yeah.
And they deserved none of it. They deserved none of his loyalty. Him and Calvin Johnson brought them to the playoffs a few times, and if it wasn't for his, willingness to stick around there and try and make it work time and time and again, they would have had no playoff appearances over that 12-year stretch, and they, who knows where they'd be now. And so I was disappointed to see the reaction, and I understand. Yes, that day he's public enemy number one. He's the opposing quarterback. But can we show the man who basically served your franchise more than he should have for 12 years with a little more respect, just a little bit more? I'm not a big proponent of booing in general, but that was a moment that I was very disappointed in the Detroit fans. And I know that sounds very rich coming from a Vikings fan whose team has been eliminated and all that stuff. And I know Vikings fans do not have a great reputation in a lot of ways, but I was disappointed.
This is my thing.
Last thought
It's not like Stafford, left the team and then went and signed. He didn't butt foul the Lions. He didn't leave the butt foul. Obviously, he left Green Bay, went to the Jets, immediately then went back to Minnesota. Came back and said, "I want to be in the NFC North. I want to beat the Packers twice. I want to make them pay for moving off of me." And he did. Woohoo! But it's not like Matthew Stafford didn't do that. Matthew Stafford, I don't even think he really forced his way out of town. The Lions made a decision to trade him. By the way, that trade landed you Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamison Williams and a bunch of different players that now start for your team, including the quarterback that just won you your first playoff game since 91?
Other helmets
something?
were used.
Yes, it doesn't make any sense to me. I get booing. Booing to me is, I get it. I understand booing. The flipping him off and, guys screaming F you Stafford, that is whoa, come on, man. That's some Philadelphia stuff. I don't vibe with it. And again, that's why I'm going to keep on saying the Lions need to be humbled. This is my big picture. What does it mean for the Vikings thing? Here's why I don't fear the Lions going into next season. Ben Johnson is going to be a head coach somewhere. Dan Campbell called plays for the Lions and led them to an 0-7 record. So I'm interested to see what the Lions offense looks like when Ben Johnson leaves. And do we see almost what's happened with Philadelphia where Shane Steichen left? And all of a sudden Philadelphia is they are this year's Minnesota Vikings, right? The point differential isn't good enough to be considered a contender. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen there. What do you think of my baby's having a meltdown? I apologize, guys. But what do you think of the Lions moving forward? We'll do the Packers in a second, but the Lions specifically, come September, are you picking... Do you think you'll be thinking contending for division, wild card, or do they go back in the basement where they belong, rightfully so?
The Ben Johnson comment, very important. Glad you got that right out front and center. Ben Johnson is elite offensive mind. These guys are standing wide open all over the field, and two things are true with Jared Goff. You give him open receivers and you give him time, it's over. The guy is accurate. The guy can throw a strike when he has those two things. And not only are guys open with him, the guys are wide open, and Goff is, he's figured out how to play mistake-free football. So,
and it's
major props to Ben Johnson.
It's the timing of when he calls some of these plays that just feels he's such a good play caller. It's something that I think Kevin O'Connell understands and has a really good scheme. Sometimes the play calling, we take a step back and we're like, whoa, Kevin, we see why Sean didn't let you do this with the Rams, kind of, So I the offensive scheme will remain, but will the potency of the play calling be there? Where it's 3rd and 15, gotta have it. What are we calling? Are we calling a deep shot to get the first down, or are we just gonna hand it off to David Montgomery for 5 yards and then punt? And it's gonna be a big loss. I'm curious to see how they replace him.
Yeah, so that's the first thing. And who they replace him with, and what their plan is to replace his play calling is going to be very interesting, and a big factor in where I place the Lions on the NFC North hierarchy next fall. Aaron Glenn is another thing. I'm not necessarily going to be super excited if he gets hired as a head coach. I'm also not necessarily going to be super disappointed if he gets hired. I mean, it is what it is. Their defense has been meh. The other thing that needs to be taken into account is Mr. Goff. I believe his contract is running out, if not up, at the end of this season.
It is
Let me
out
quick
of
fact check
guaranteed
myself.
money. Here, you continue with this take, and I will correct you if it needs it.
Right, that's right. He's got one more year on his contract, 2024, but they could have some massive cap savings if they cut him, whether that's before or after June 1st.
Yep.
So depending on how this goes, let's say the Lions. Okay, we all know that if the Lions are, winning the Super Bowl, I think Jared Goff's coming back. But if the Lions are blown out somehow next week, don't think it's going to happen. Let's just say that they lose at home by 2 touchdowns to the Eagles. That could be the end of the Jared Goff era. And not that Jared Goff is a top 5 quarterback and irreplaceable, but quarterback change always ends up causing tumult, whatever the word is, tumult. Just like with the Vikings when they brought in Kirk Cousins in 2018. He has turned out to be a vastly better quarterback than Case Keenum, but the 2018 season was rocky. It was not good. And so the Lions would probably deal with some of that next year if Goff is gone. So those are the things that I think about. I mean, Dan Campbell, I think there are some things that I'm concerned about with him, but when it comes to the guts, the culture, the toughness, the aggressiveness, he seems to be relatively football savvy. I think some of his decision making is suspect, and I still think that he's going to cost his team a playoff game because of it. I think he's got the right culture in place where they'll be able to withstand maybe some storms. But those two things with Goff and Johnson are the biggest question marks. Yeah. A lot of their position players are young dudes, so they'll be back. Amon-Ra's not going anywhere. Jahmyr Gibbs obviously isn't going anywhere. Sam Laporta not going anywhere.
Yep.
And then the rest of the guys are building block or not building block, but fill in the gap pieces. Raymond's good, but Josh Reynolds is good, but
yeah.
So there's I think they'll be fine. But those couple big question marks.
Well, but that's the difference, because so I did look up Jared Goff's contract, and one of the big news pieces coming out of Detroit is Jared Goff's agent made a statement about how he thinks that they're going to reach an agreement for a contract extension, which that's agent talk. That's not, breaking news. There's an extension on the table. Hey, we think that they want him back. And so, who knows, but who knows how Goff is going to play under new offensive coordinator TBD, because I think we saw with Case Keenum. Case Keenum flourished with these exact weapons and, oh shucks, help me out. Who was the offensive coordinator in 2017 that got the Giants head coach?
Shurmur?
Yes, Pat Shurmur. Pat Shurmur, Case Keenum, and that Vikings offense, it flourished. It was a beautiful thing. Case Keenum and any other person looks like a bum. And there is a special connection that OCs get with their quarterbacks. I think Kevin O'Connell kind of has that with Cousins, where he gets the best out of him. It's the best we see him play is under O'Connell and in this offense. And they just know how to make him tick. So, if you get, let's call the offensive coordinator, Jerry Bilbob, and Jerry Bilbob comes in and he rubs Goff the wrong way. I just don't know. Last thing I'll say about the Lions, and then we'll give Packers takes, and then we'll get out of here. If you're saying Dan Campbell's such a good coach because he goes forward all the time and he's so ballsy and he doesn't, he embodies this team and blah, blah, blah. Keep that energy next season whenever the fourth down conversion rate goes from 75 or whatever it is this season down to 35. And all of a sudden he's giving teams the ball in the red zone, basically, because he did a fake punt. And, shoot, we just gave them 7? How'd we end up losing 5 games this year by, 30 points? What happened? Just keep that energy. If Dan Campbell, I'm not saying it's going to happen. Dan Campbell could end up being John Madden and have a great career. I'm just saying, when you make these risky decisions all the time, eventually the risk will not pay off, and you will end up looking like a fool. And so just everyone keep the same energy. If you love going for it all the time, then you love Dan Campbell. So you got to love when he leads you to a 6-win season. I'm just pointing that out.
Yeah, it's obviously you have to give him props for aggressiveness because it has worked a lot. but it's something that could turn you very quickly into Brandon Staley
Yeah, yeah,
if
that's such a
it
good
doesn't
call.
if it doesn't go well. So, I think when you look at the results over the last couple of years, you have to give Dan Campbell more credit than that, because like that's a little bit cheap to Dan Campbell because of what they've been able to do. But we also have to be honest with it. Like, you're rolling the dice, and if the dice rolls in the in the opposite direction and you don't get the results that you wanted, then Lions fans might be back to questioning their head coach. So,
And it seems like the
all
owners
that
move
said,
off of
though,
coaches super quick.
yeah, I mean, that's the other thing too, is do you trust the Detroit franchise to be one that, now, they have a good general manager and we believe they have a good head coach. So like, of those two things, you're in pretty good shape. But do we trust their ownership?
Agreed.
That's the piece where I think you look at the history of this franchise, I don't know if you can. So, all that said, you have to respect the Lions going into next season. We will see what those two big pieces happen, or what happens with those two big pieces on the offensive side.
Yeah, getting into Green Bay, and we'll do this quickly because we've went way over time, and we've done this a lot lately, and I think this has been a great show, but we are gonna quickly, I think, breeze through Green Bay. Green Bay going into next season, and what I think of them, are they back to being the kings of the NFC North, and they're gonna win, 12 division titles in the next 15 years? I don't know. I really don't. That's the thing with Green Bay. I have no idea what to think of this team. Are they going to keep Jair Alexander, or are they going to look to move off of him because of some of the locker room stuff and the behind-the-scenes stuff that's happened this season? Are they going to... Because if they move off, he's a really good player. He's just, mouthy and does stupid things sometimes. So, what are they going to do with Alexander? Is Jordan Love even good? We kind of discussed some of this earlier, and so that's why going into the season, I'm probably going to do what I did this year. I've predicted they'd finish second in the division this season. I thought they would have a solid year.
Flowers.
But I just don't know that it's repeatable. I don't know that, getting 5 yards of separation on every pass you throw is doable, 18 times, 17 times in a season, however many. So I'm going to have to pencil them in as I'm going to expect them to be good. I think they have the best coach in the division, and I think they have a good wide receiver room. I think their offense is good. I think the offensive line is good. The running backs are good. The wide receivers do just enough. So I'm going to pencil them in as they probably will be good for a few years to come. Now, is that going to be because of Jordan Love? Or is that going to be Jordan Love just piloting this beautiful private jet that they've built for him? And once some rust starts foaming and there's a chip in the wing and it starts to get some age on it, we'll see what it looks like. But I am kind of terrified, shaking in my boots, peeing down my leg, that Jordan Love might be a guy. I'm just not going to stamp it after one pretty good playoff game that he is the next Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre. So what do you think of Green Bay?
We talked a lot about Love already, so I will spare all that. Other than one thing that needs to be stated, lots of credit to Jordan Love for making these receivers work when every year Aaron Rodgers complained about his young receivers.
It's very true.
We have to be honest about that. Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, first ballot, all that. Maybe one of the most talented quarterbacks, or if not the most talented quarterback ever. But he never put the time in with his young receivers. He complained about them. He did not give them the time of day. Jordan Love has made 5, not just 1 or 2, 5 first or second year receivers work beautifully. So whether that's because they're all about 25 or 22, in between that 22 to 25 range, and they're all, buddies and they can hang out, I don't know. But that's huge, because now the Packers have 5 receivers who believe in themselves and all are making about, pennies for the next 2-3 years. And so Green Bay is in an awesome position financially with their skill position players. Aaron Jones is going to be obviously still a really good player. We saw that yesterday. He was fantastic. He looked fast. He looked untackleable, efficient to the holes, all that. He looked fantastic. His time is going to come, not necessarily this next year, but it happens with running backs sooner than we all would like. AJ Dillon, though, should have a few more years in the tank, and so they're going to be fine offensively. Green Bay is also, like you said, they run their operation very well historically. It's you hate to say it as a Vikings fan, as any NFC North fan. Now they don't have the amount of Super Bowls in the last couple decades to really back that up, but their success year in and year out, division titles, playoff victories, NFC Championship games. They are a very well-oiled machine in that way, and they're going to draft and develop players well, even if they don't attract free agents, because Green Bay really doesn't. I mean, no one wants to go live in middle of nowhere Wisconsin where it's -30 for playoff games.
Right.
So there's just a level of team building and roster development that Green Bay does really well. And so you have to respect that. The last thing I'll say on this, and then I'll let you kind of close it up if there's anything else you want to comment on. Again, this is going to sound like a cope, and this is going to sound like, very rich Vikings fan take. The Packers don't make the playoffs if Kirk Cousins doesn't tear his Achilles.
Ooh.
So none of us are, we're not going to be sitting here shaking in our boots about the Green Bay Packers if Kirk Cousins is healthy. So that doesn't mean that they are any better off today than they were a month ago, or than they would be if Kirk had stayed healthy. But I think we look at them a lot differently because of that. And now this is valuable experience for them. This is building their confidence. This is going to make them all the more hungry if they do end up going to San Francisco and losing and a heartbreaker. They're going to be all the more ready for next season, and they're going to be a tough out. But I don't think the Packers are in the playoffs if Kirk doesn't crumple to the Lambeau Field floor on October 29th.
I love that take. I adore that take. Because I do think that I think you're right. I think the Vikings do, look, do we win all the games we win? No, probably not. No, we probably lose one of like the 3 that we won after he got hurt, but we also probably win like 3 or 4 of the ones that we lost after he got hurt. So, weigh that how you will.
Yeah.
Love
and
that.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Vikings win 13 games. They were 4-4. But I think the Vikings definitely win at least 9. And they would have had the tiebreaker over Green Bay.
Well, yeah, they have to finish one game better than 3-6. Is that what they finished without Kirk? Because they finished 7-10. So,
well, it depends on if they would have beaten Green Bay that second time. But either way, they finished with 9 wins, which wouldn't have taken much given their schedule and given some of the games they had. Obviously, it's all.
I'm gonna one up you.
Hearsay, but
I'm gonna one up you. I'm gonna say the Packers don't make the playoffs if the Vikings stout Nick Mullins against Green Bay instead of Jaron Hall. There you go. One up.
Might be right.
Hot takes, spicy stuff. Final thoughts. Follow the show at LTB Vikings. Follow this guy over here at Will Bad Lose and check out the Bad Loser blog. Find us wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the damn YouTube. Come on, we enjoy you guys. Mash it, smash it, mash it. Do all that stuff. I hate being that guy. I hate being the shill that begs for subscriptions, but please subscribe. I wore my nice sweater today. This is what my final thoughts will mainly
Buffalo
be about.
Bills sweater.
I wore my Buffalo sweater. It's not technically a Buffalo Bills sweater, but the Bills play here in about half an hour as we're recording this. So I put on the pretty Buffaloes by the mountain, and it's a brand new sweater. I literally just got it. It was like 50% off at Old Navy. I buy all my clothes from Old Navy. Yeah.
This sweatshirt also new from Old Navy yesterday.
What a unplanned COVID. We are in sync. This show is going play. We double COVID, double new Old Navy sweaters, double think Green Bay doesn't make the playoffs if Kirk Cousins doesn't get home. Going forward, I want to, and this will be like my actual final thought, and then I'll close the show. I want to talk about the Rams for just a second, and specifically what they did. They sold their soul to get a Super Bowl, and they were supposed to suck for years because they had no draft picks. The quarterback was getting old. Stafford was injury prone. It just seemed like the team was going to deteriorate, and this was supposed to be
They almost retired.
Yep. Yeah, like McVay was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. Like, this team is going to be so bad. And they came in, they had good coaching, they got young players in the building, and they won 10 games and made a wild card and looked pretty decent throughout the season, and then lost a playoff game on the road by a single point. So, to the Vikings fans that think, oh, we can't get rid of Harrison Smith. Oh, we can't get rid of Kirk Cousins. Oh, we can't. You can get rid of anybody, man. You can put your team in a dumpster fire and somehow come out the other side, squeaky clean and a wild card team with a pretty bright looking future ahead of them. They're going to have to figure out the quarterback because Stafford's kind of old, but I just don't think, it was kind of a showing to me because I am afraid, especially with the Lions and the Packers on the up and up. It's a showing to me to see, oh, the Rams were supposed to suck and they didn't suck. So if the Vikings are supposed to suck, maybe they won't suck. So that was kind of a showing to me. Yep. Absolutely last final thought. You look at Green Bay, you look at Detroit. What do they have in common? Their offensive lines are dominant. Draft a guard at 11. I don't care, man. Just this offense. I don't want to see more than like 10 sacks next season, and I know that's unrealistic. But like, this offensive line needs fixed in Minnesota, and I don't mean bandages, Dalton Reisner, Ed Ingram. No, I mean heavy draft capital or heavy money spent to build an absolute, I'm going to sound like Trump, build a wall and make Chicago pay for it. That's all I have. That was my really bad Trump impression. We'll be back next week. We got two more NFC North playoff games. It's the COVID. It's the nasally COVID that makes it decent. But we got two more NFC North playoff games that we'll talk about next week. Hopefully, it can be crazy. It can be the show where we sit back and we go, ha 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 ha. You guys suck. You're just like us. Ha ha ha. I hope you're happy with your bad draft position.
I mean, I must say, man, we're getting to the point where we might as well just become a national show. We're so good at this, off the cuff stuff with talking about other teams. We might as well just become a national show and pretend.
I hate talking about Detroit and Green Bay, but like, what are we going to talk about? You want to do? Like, here's what we'll do. There's other Viking shows that do this. Let's have the same discussion about Kirk Cousins every day, 7 days a week,
from a different angle.
Yes, and let's flip flop all the time on it. And then I'm not going to throw too much shade at other Viking shows, but that's all. We can say let's pay this person, pay this person, pay this person, pay this person when there's a salary cap, so we can't. We're going to keep things realistic. We're going to talk about the team that we love, and unfortunately, right now they're on the couch. Their rivals are in the dance, making some noise. We've been Load the Box. I'm Jordan. He's Will. We hope to see you guys next week with some better news and a more upbeat and happy show talking about some blowouts. Go San Francisco and go whoever wins the Eagles-Bucks game. Skol, y'all.